Oh my God, sealed.
Yeah.
We just visited a place called Tom's Donuts. Tom's Donuts, and we got a huge box of donuts. It's a huge box of donuts, right?
Yes.
And it's yummy. Open it up. Look at these donuts. Oh, look at those donuts.
It's gonna fall.
I got it.
Okay, I don't. At the outside.
It's a huge box of donuts. Oh, great.
Did someone say donuts? You know what goes great with donuts? Coffee. For those that don't know me, my name is Pilk, and I am a self-proclaimed coffee aficionado, nay, coffee sommelier. I have had Kona in Kona, Hawaii. I have had Cafe Cubano on Buford Highway in Atlanta, but that's close enough for my taste. I have tried coffee from literally everywhere and anywhere you can imagine, and that's why I actually have come to really like Rom Roast. This was supposed to be the demo bag, and I accidentally the whole first bag. So, dear Root, I could use a little bit more. Thanks again. Now, first things first, do not let this bag fool you. While it does say medium roast, now if you, like me, are a fan of dark roast, fret not. This cup is full of all the flavors and all the notes that you are usually accustomed to in a fine dark roast. We're talking chocolates, we are talking caramel notes. It really is everything that you want in a dark roast. While I'm brewing it behind me in a pour over, I've actually done this as both a cup of cappuccino, latte, just a regular espresso, and believe it or not, even there, it still holds the bar. It is fantastic. I absolutely stand by this product. Rom Roast by Root, a wonderful cup of coffee. Don't trust me? Check out the link down below for 10% off. Guys, go get yourself a bag right now. Enjoy.
We're in Fort Wayne, not Fort Minor. And for some reason I wanted to say Texas, because it sounds like a Texas place. State? Indiana. And we're gonna take a look at Retro Evolution. This place is like a little hole in the wall. You can't even see it from outside. So let's see if they're even open. How long have you guys been open?
10 years now.
Whew. This reminds me of one of the stores back home. Mortal Kombat 3 Ultimate.
Oh, the Golden Sun.
Nobody has it complete though. You guys don't happen to have Golden Sun complete, do you?
Not at the moment.
Yeah.
It went right on out the door.
I bet it did.
Yeah.
Hey guys, HarleyQ here, and today I have the pleasure of talking about the ESRB and Mortal Kombat. But before we do, we have to lay some groundwork. It's the early 90s, and it's the wild, wild west of video games. There is no guidelines, and basically video games can pretty much do whatever they want. And because of that, there's one video game that comes under fire, that being Mortal Kombat. The game was developed by Midway Arcades in 1992, and was the #1 selling arcade game that year. The game was so popular that Acclaim decided to port it over to home systems in '93 and spend $10 million in advertising. It did really well. The game sold phenomenally. There are two very distinctly different versions of the home port, the first being the SNES developed by Nintendo. Nintendo opted out in removing the blood and going for sweat, and obviously toning down some of the finishing moves. The reason for that is Nintendo had their own rules and regulations on things that could appear in Nintendo brand products, as opposed to Sega, who steered right into the skid and said, yeah, you know what? Hell yeah, brother. Let's add a cheat code that adds even more blood. They left everything in, and you can guess which version sold better. That is correct. It is the Sega Genesis version. Now, the reason Sega did this was they actually had their own set of guidelines, and it had their own categories being general audiences, mature 13, and M17. Mortal Kombat was rated M13, which I think ultimately kind of screws Mortal Kombat over in the end. There's an individual named Bill Anderson who purchased the game for his son, and obviously when he got home and realized how violent the game was, he was very upset. So he approached his boss, Senator Joseph Lieberman, and basically said, hey, what are we going to do about this? Lieberman actually created a congressional meeting to address the violence of video games. It was a board of experts discussing all of the meat and potatoes of video games, basically the effect of violence on kids, how they felt that violent video games made them act more violent, although there have been studies to disprove that. And then there was also another concern about how females were looking in video games, as well as gun violence. See, there were 3 games that were brought up during this congressional meeting, one being Mortal Kombat, the other 2 belonging only on Sega systems, Night Trap and Lethal Enforcers. No. Okay, essentially this congressional meeting was to address and tell that these video game companies that they could self-regulate as long as they came up with their own rating system. And they felt that they needed to monitor the type of content that they were putting on their games. Nintendo basically said, hey, this has nothing to do with us. We have our own guidelines here. And 2 of those 3 games don't even appear on Nintendo systems. And Howard Lincoln, the president at the time for Nintendo of North America, had that beautiful quote that aged like milk, where he says that Night Trap will never appear on a Nintendo system. Like I said, it aged like milk. Essentially, Nintendo said, this ain't our problem. This is Sega's problem. These are Sega's games. Sega's versions of the games are more violent, so you need to be addressing Sega. Sega's response was, well, we have our own rating system here, so we feel that our games are rated properly, and our demographic really isn't for children. The mature games that they were complaining about were Night Trap and Lethal Enforcers, and those games already had the mature rating on them. One of the counter arguments to Sega's own rating system was there was nothing to really enforce it, that a store clerk could literally just sell the video game to anyone, whether there was a mature rating on there. There needed to be some kind of enforcement there. And that's pretty much where they got them, really. The other problem that the congressional meeting also had with Sega's rating system is they felt that it was very too generic. It wasn't really addressing some of the problems. Essentially, in 1994, Lieberman basically threatened the video game industry and said, you guys can either self-regulate yourselves, create your own rating industry, or the government is going to step in. And there is one thing that big companies hate more than each other. It's government intervention. Yeah, they hate government intervention because nobody wants to be told what to do. So Sega, Nintendo, and 60% of the video game market came together to create the ESRB. Now, there was a couple of tricks that they had to go through first. First of all, how were they going to deal with all of the video games that were already on the shelves? Basically, Sega, Nintendo, and other game developers said, we just can't rate the games that are already out. It would be impossible for us to take them off the shelves, rate them, both financially and physically. It would be impossible for us to do. But what we can do is, moving forward, we're going to work with select retailers, so places like Toys R Us and Target that were known for selling video games, that they're only going to sell our ESRB games. And this is where the ESRB is born. So basically, if you wanted to be selling video games, you had to get your game rated through the ESRB, because if you wanted it sold in a major retail store, it needed to be rated. And that was how they tricked the companies integrating the ESRB. There were 5 categories originally created for the ESRB: early childhood, adolescence. Oh my God, we're having a hard time here. So there are 5 categories that came with the ESRB. There was early childhood, there was kids to adults, teens, adults only, and then mature. I'm correct. It's correct. Overall, this congressional panel was very pleased with how these game companies came together, because the government really didn't want to get involved at all to begin with, and they did want these companies to self-regulate. So them creating the ESRB was phenomenal. There have been additional categories and changes. Essentially, the ESRB is there just to rate the games. They aren't there for censorship. They aren't there to tell you what you can and can't put in a game, but they're there strictly just to rate the game. And that was the point of the ESRB, and that is the point of the ESRB. money. In fact, the ESRB has actually been, what was I gonna say? All right. In fact, the ESRB has a bunch of resources on their website teaching parents about the rating system, as well as other resources when it comes to what kind of content that their kids are consuming. And they've actually been commended for that. I think that's pretty awesome. But for me, rating systems meant nothing. Yeah, no. My parents laughed at the rating systems. They thought it was hilarious because they wanted to be able to decide what content their kid consumed, not a little thing in the corner. But I mean, they still kind of determined that. Being uncensored in the early 90s and early 2000s was a different time. Yeah, that's just the... Yeah. Back to you in the studios.
News are right here. You can grab it whenever you need to. Okay.
Display. Ever.
That's got the letter from Mike Tyson in there too.
Does it? That's why the price is so up there.
So it's Mike Tysons Punch Out that you want to know about. All right, fine, but in order to do that, we have to go all the way back to the year 1983, when Nintendo decided to rebrand a bunch of its arcade cabinets for home systems. Now, something that you have to keep in mind during this time is that arcade cabinets have a lot more components and a lot more power than home systems. So generally, the two versions do differ, mostly graphically. However, Nintendo did add a bunch of features into the home system, such as cutscenes, some additional animation, some Easter eggs, and a password, which would save your progress for the boxer you were fighting. But what were some of those Easter eggs? Mainly cues in the background to let you know what the perfect time was to punch so you can get the perfect KO on a boxer. Now, this game is where we get the introduction of Little Mac, who apparently is a 17-year-old boxer from the Bronx. Since this game was released globally, and some of the names were heavily based on stereotypes, they did have to do some changing of the names. One of the changing of those names would have to be for the Russian boxer Vodka Drunkinsky, whose name was changed to Soda Popinski, which is only slightly better. Now, you're probably wondering, how the hell does Mike Tyson come into all this? Well, the former president of America, Minoru Akawara, please forgive me on the pronunciation, was at a boxing championship where Mike Tyson was obviously having a match, and he was so blown away by Mike Tyson, and he had a couple of ideas. He knew how popular Mike Tyson was in the United States, and he also knew that Punch Out was not going to sell well in Japan because of the fact that boxing wasn't really a popular sport in Japan. So he pitched an idea to Mike Tyson saying, hey, let's sign a 3-year deal with Nintendo where we can use your face, your name, your likeness for 3 years, and we'll pay you this sum of money. Mike Tyson agreed, and Mike Tyson's Punch Out was born. There are 3 versions of the game. There's a gold version, which was made before the Mike Tyson deal. There is Mike Tyson's Punch Out, and then there is Punch Out, which came out right after the 3-year deal with Mike Tyson. So in theory, Mike Tyson's Punch Out was only sold for 3 years, but Punch Out was sold way longer than that. However, Mike Tyson's Punch Out sold more than 2 million units. The only other Nintendo game to do that would be The Legend of Zelda for the NES, so that's still pretty impressive. Now, I mentioned that there is a gold cart. This is a very special cart. There was only 10,000 units of these carts made, and it was only made in Japan. You could win it through a raffle, and you could also win it through competing some US golf tournament game. Obviously, these gold carts are very rare. The carts themselves selling for hundreds of dollars themselves, but a complete in box gold cart of Punch Out sells over like $700, which is like insane. The only difference between Mike Tyson's Punch Out and Punch Out really would be the final boss, as opposed to fighting Mike Tyson. The other boss that you will fight is Super Macho Man, which is in no relation to Macho Man Randy Savage. Yes, I looked into it. I spent an immense amount of time researching it. I don't know why. I made that link and I was like, I gotta know. However, there is some theories that Super Macho Man is a parody of Hulk Hogan, but no confirmation. You wrestling people are interesting. You guys have really interesting theories. Shigeru Miyamoto actually designed some of the boxers for Punch Out, but he felt that his designs were way too cute and didn't fit with the real overall aesthetic for Punch Out. I believe he designed the Russian boxer. Punch Out will probably always be associated with Mike Tyson, and a lot of people think that Nintendo dropped Mike Tyson because of all of his criminal activities in the early 90s, but that's absolutely not true. It all had to do with the deal running out. That 3-year deal that he had signed with the president of Nintendo. Yeah, that's it. That's all it was. Nothing other than that. Yeah, actually, the deal ran out way before any of his accusations, any of his criminal charges, all of that, so the two are completely unrelated. Nintendo only paid $50,000 for that deal with Mike Tyson. So they only paid $50,000 for a 3-year deal, and they sold over 200,000 units. So I don't know, I can't do math, but they made a lot of money off of that game. Also, Punch Out turned 40 last year. Crazy concept, I know, but yeah, Punch Out's 40 years old. This one was truly insane, but a man named Jack Wedge beat Punch Out completely blindfolded. And yeah, like, it truly is a skill issue, for me at least, because I know people still say, and I would probably agree with this, that Mike Tyson is probably still one of the hardest bosses to beat in a video game, so let alone do it blindfolded. Holy, what about the rest of us? Leave a comment below if you've ever beat Punch Out or Mike Tyson. Not me.
Yeah.
Oh, see, these are impressive. Oh my God, sealed.
Yeah.
I think I just found my new home away from home. You guys have a website?
Facebook page.
Do you ship?
I don't ship, unfortunately.
Oh man.
And that's just because of how fast a lot of this stuff moves in-house for me. The normal
Understandable.
lifespan of a game in here is about 2 to 3 weeks. And then my stock fully rotates.
Metroid's a game that's been around for a long time. Originally releasing in 1986, the game is well over 35 years old at this point. Make me feel old. The game originally released on the Nintendo Family Entertainment System, or the Nintendo NES, or the Nintendo Famicom in Japan. Now, the Famicom used floppy disks around this time, and there was some pros and cons to this. Over here on the NES, we used cartridges, and playing it on the cartridge, there were some issues with it. There was lagging when there was too many particles going on in the screen, especially when you're fighting Mother Brain at the end and everything is shooting at you, and you're trying to jump, and there's lag, and Samus is flickering in and out. The other issue is if you were playing it on the Famicom, while you didn't have lagging issues like that, because the game was originally made for that, you did have other issues where loading times were bad. And I mean, some people don't like loading times, they're impatient, and other people don't really mind it. And some people hate the lag, and most people hate the lag. But to be fair, I grew up playing the game on the NES, and so I got used to the lag myself. Now, thankfully, the game was remade, and it was remade on the Game Boy Advance. And I really wish they would do a port for this game, but it hasn't happened yet. And the game was called Metroid Zero Mission, and my God, was it fantastic. Like, it was a true remake of the game, and on top of that, it added extra to the game. Instead of ending the game at Mother Brain, once you beat Mother Brain, there was more, which was surprising. Now Samus got stripped of all of her abilities, she got stripped of her armor, and it becomes more of a stealth mission because now she's vulnerable and she only has a blaster. And in order to survive, she has to make her way through vents and duct systems to get away from the pirates until she's able to get her abilities back. And one hit ends the game for you. It was a great addition. It was a welcome addition because, again, you're taking a game that a lot of people have played, so you want to make it fresh for old players, and you want to give something more to everybody, to give a good impression to those who are playing Metroid for the first time. And my God, did they stick the landing on this game. Zero Mission was absolutely fantastic. The game Metroid was heavily inspired by Alien, which is one of my favorite movies and favorite franchises. I love it, I really do, and probably one of the reasons why I love Metroid as much as I do. Capturing the isolation and the emptiness of space and being surrounded by these creatures. It's what I love about both the game and Alien movie. And so much of this was inspired by Alien that when Samus reveals herself to be a woman, her hair is modeled after Sigourney Weaver in the first Alien movie. On top of that, you have a character who's one of the main antagonists who is named after the director for the Alien movies, Ridley Scott. which is Ridley, one of the main antagonists in the first Metroid game and many Metroid games afterwards. Later games, they changed Samus's design using Cindy Crawford as a base, and you can tell because some of the iterations of Samus have a mole. And so over time, they've taken that base of Cindy Crawford and kind of redid her design to be who she is now, that blonde-haired, slender kind of woman that she is. And I mean, it doesn't matter either way. I mean, times change, so I guess Samus's design is obviously going to change. Metroid 2, which was on the Game Boy, was a marvel on its own as well, because you're taking a game that's on the Game Boy, which doesn't have as high resolution. I know this is weird to say, has as high resolution as the Nintendo did, but they added a lot more detail into Samus's design on the Game Boy. Granted, there was less viewing space because it felt like the game was a little bit more zoomed in on Samus to be able to give that detail to her, but it was incredible to see. And on top of that, because the game ran in black and white, there was no color on the Game Boy at that time. Not talking about the Game Boy Color, but at that time, there was no color on the Game Boy. The designs of the suits had to be different instead of color swapping like they were before. So the Varia suit in the Game Boy game, Metroid 2, The Return of Samus, I get this confused because they did a remake of it called Samus Returns. But the Varia suit in the Game Boy game had to be designed a specific way so it was different than Samus's original design. And because of that, the design of the Varia suit is now the design for the Varia suit for moving forward from that game on. So the design that we recognize and a lot of the promotion that they use Samus on shows the Varia suit because it is a more iconic suit and it does stand out more than her original slender suit. This suit became the suit that we all know and love. And as I mentioned, the game was remade. It was remade on the 3DS, and my God, what a fantastic remake it was. It blew me away when I played it for the first time last year, and I didn't think that I would love it as much as I did. I had a wonderful time playing this game. It was a true remake, just like the first remake was. This was a true remake, and it also set the blueprints for what was going to come in for the next game, which was Metroid Dread. On top of that, the ending of Metroid 2, Samus Returns, the remake, bridged the gap between Super Metroid and Metroid Fusion because it gave a little teaser to show what was going to come in Metroid Fusion. Because as a result of Samus's adventure in Metroid 2, where she exterminates all the Metroids, it allows the Parasite X to become rampant because, according to the lore, the Metroids feed on the parasites. And so because of that natural order, it kept them at bay. This game series has a lot of lore to it, has a lot of history to it, and is so good. I love playing these games. These games have been some of my favorite games as I've grown up. One of my dogs was named Samus after Samus. Unfortunately, she passed away last year. But I love this series, and I love what it stands for. It stands for a time that Nintendo was experimenting with things, and you know, over the years it's grown but kept that core essence. It's kept that exploration that we love from the first game all the way to the newest game. It's kept that sense of dread. It's kept that sense of isolation as you play through all the games, and they've done a wonderful job throughout the years with almost every Metroid game. This is sickening. But almost every Metroid game. And Metroid was the first time that we had a strong female lead in a game too. And the reveal was incredible because even the manual itself referenced Samus as a he, but it wasn't until you beat the game that she took off her helmet and revealed herself to be a woman. That just blew me away. And I know many others as well, and it made sense, right? Like, they did something similar with Alien, where Alien, they have all these action stars, and they make it seem like they're the main characters, but then it goes and Sigourney Weaver's the main character. So it makes sense that they did that because they are referencing Alien in a lot of Metroid itself, so props to them. I love the Metroid series. Let me know what you guys think. Which one is your favorite Metroid game? Dread is mine. I love that game. I can't wait for another one, or another Metroid game in general. Here, I'm just rambling now. I'll see you guys next time. Well, let's keep going with the episode.
Yeah, it's just, again, I'm from Florida, so.
That's a big one. Whoa. It was one of the last Game Boy games ever released.
Huh.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Jesus. 1,000 Arms. Oh, you guys have Kudelka. I like how you specify printed artwork but comes with a manual.
I pride myself in that because the other shops around here, they'll print off printed artwork and they'll charge complete price.
Yeah.
And it always upsets me. It's like, if it's printed artwork, it needs to be the loose price. So
That's Jesus. Even if it's loose with the manual, like, you can get the artwork. You can find that eventually.
Yep.
What else you guys have that you haven't taken out yet?
That's my high-end stuff.
So it's the Philips CDI Legend of Zelda games that you want to know about. Sure, no problem, we can talk about it. But in order to do that, we have to go all the way back to the year 1989, when Sony and Nintendo had an exclusive deal together. What was this deal? Sony was going to develop a CD add-on for the SNES. This was called the SNES CD, or the Nintendo PlayStation, and we do actually have pictures on what that looks like. Sony felt that they deserved all of the profits from the CD portion of the console, while Nintendo felt they deserved some cut of it because obviously it was their system. And ultimately it was because of this disagreement that Nintendo did back out of this deal. Sony actually got so mad that Nintendo backed out that they created their own video game system, and that's where the Sony PlayStation comes. Now, Nintendo did eventually go to Philips to create this CD add-on for the SNES, but that was only short-lived because they saw how bad the Mega Drive add-on, or the Genesis add-on, depending on which region that you're in, they saw how poor those sales were and the reception was for that. So they ultimately cut the project for the SNES CD. And because of that, they had to dissolve their partnership with Philips. And in that dissolving of partnership, they got exclusive use to use some of Nintendo's characters. And that's where we give birth to this abomination, which is the Legend of Zelda for the Philips CDI. And you're also probably wondering what the hell a Philips CDI is. Well, it is a multimedia system. A lot of people will tell you it's just a failed video game system. It's more than that. It plays CDs and some other stuff too, but it does play video games. It wasn't really designed for video games. In fact, video games were an afterthought, and obviously the system didn't sell well. However, there were 3 Legend of Zelda games that were released for it, one being Zelda's Adventure, which was the last release, and that game was only released in Europe. The other 2 Legend of Zelda games being Link, The Faces of Evil, and Zelda, The Wand of Gamelon. Both of them were released on the exact same day, and they're generally the same story. It's Zelda saving Link and Link saving Zelda. And this is the first time that you get to play Zelda. The cutscenes are groundbreaking because this is the first time they actually outsourced animators from Russia, and it was apparently like 2 guys crammed in an apartment for 6 months that made that animation, so that's why it looks the way it does.
Father!
You've saved me!
Here's the traitor, your majesty. Please, your omnipotence, have mercy.
After you've scrubbed all the floors in Hyrule, then we can talk about mercy. Take him away.
What happened? Nothing, Link. We were just about to have a feast.
Great!
But it's groundbreaking because they outsourced it. The reviews were mixed to average, and modern critics are pretty harsh on it. It's me, I'm the modern critics. Yeah, it's ass.
Well, excuse me, princess.
It looks like ass.
Well, excuse me again, princess.
It looks like it plays like ass.
Well, excuse me, princess.
However, there is a group of people online who have grown to love these 2 games very, very much. And it was actually re-released, emulated, and apparently it plays a lot better with the re-release and it being emulated. It mainly is just terrible because it's playing on the Philips CDI. So take what you will with that. Like I said, the last Legend of Zelda game to be released was Zelda's Adventure. This one was only released in the UK. I don't think it was only released in the UK. I think it was PAL region. PAL region is the word, not just the UK. There's more to the PAL region than just the UK. This was released in '94. This game was only released in PAL This one was only released I just lost everything. I went completely blank what I was saying. It was only released in the PAL region. This one's different from the other two because they cut out cutscenes and they went to digitize actors. It's interesting because multiple different people who worked on the game had multiple different things to say about the budget. One said that it was like the biggest video game budget ever. The other one said that there was no budget at all. And both are true when you actually research how much work went into it. There was claymation models made for all of the monsters that you're seeing within the game. So that's pretty impressive too. Fun fact about this game, it takes place in Tolmac, which is literally just the word Camelot backwards. The reception for this game wasn't very well, and it was reviewed as blurry and digitized. And after reviewing some of the gameplay and looking through just everything about the game, I definitely could see why it does feel like this game was rushed a bit, but it still is really cool. When I got to see like pictures of all like the claymation character models, there was a lot of work that actually went into creating some of the monsters. I thought that was cool, but then you could see like some of the characters that were digitized, they were just like thrown together costumes. So you can see where they definitely cut budgets on this game. But it's really interesting to see licensed Nintendo characters not on Nintendo systems, that's for sure. Leave a comment below. Did you learn anything new about the Philips CDI? Did you even know this thing existed? Because I was shocked to find out this thing was a real device. Multimedia and multimedia and CDs. CD video, which is different from DVD. Apparently, there's so little things like I can't word.
I can't even.
That's what you got right now?
Yep, at the moment.
I mean, it's not bad stuff. That is great.
Everything else has hit the cases already this morning.
I'm surprised this has gone up like that.
It's insane.
It has.
I can't believe that type of game.
I have the first class edition.
Nice.
And then I have the Sephiroth for Rebirth, the Sephiroth edition. That Zero mission is nice. That store I liked a lot. Retro Evolution. They don't ship, but I mean, they have a Facebook page. I'll link it for everybody, but I like that store a lot. He had a lot of good stuff in there, and if I had the money, I would buy half that stuff right now, but I don't have that money. And a lot of that stuff our mom got rid of that we used to have.
Including some Game Boy consoles.
Yep, and rare games like that Mike Tysons Punch Out. All right, next stop, Michigan.